morning, Keelan. You can start recording.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, everybody. This is the Wednesday, July 14th morning session of the Portland City Council. Keelan, good morning.
It appears the mayor is frozen. I think he was about to say, Keelan, call the roll.
I think he was. And it looks like he may have gotten disconnected now. Let's see here if I can. Oh, there. I'm going to wait just a moment to see if he's able to get reconnected.
Thank God we have multiple computers here in this room. Good morning again. Keelan, can you call the roll, please?
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Hardesty.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio.
Here.
Ryan.
Morning here.
Wheeler.
Here, under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by video and teleconference, and the city has made several avenues available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is available to the public on the city's YouTube channel, eGovPDX, www.portlandoregon.gov/video, and Channel 30. The public can also provide written testimony to the City Council by emailing the council clerk at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and to promote physical distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your patience, your understanding, and your flexibility as we manage through these circumstances to conduct the city's business. And with that, we'll hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the city council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you're a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please be aware that all council meetings are recorded.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll start with communications. The first individual, please, Keelan, 545.
Request of Walter Weiler to address council regarding several features of the South Park Blocks master plan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Walter Weiler, living in downtown Portland and chair of and speaking on behalf of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, the DNA. Tomorrow, you will consider the approval of the South Park Blocks master plan. My comments today are an early add to that discussion. The plan's drawings show that the divided twin paver walkways, which run the length of the blocks, will be removed along with 25 majestic elms that shade the walkways. These walkways provide pedestrians with alternative paths through the park, and their size and the pavers provide an informal, restorative sense of walking in the park blocks. These walkways and elms will be replaced in the plan with a 32-foot wide, 6-block long concrete walkway down the middle of the park. a 50,000 square foot concrete slab, less charming, less intimate, and a likely heat island in the summer. The loss of the 25 elms and the addition of this concrete is a double environmental disadvantage. Large deciduous trees store carbon and cool the areas they shade, while concrete is an environmentally demanding material, creating heat islands and requiring huge amounts of energy and sand to create. Just the wrong things to do in the light of a continuing global warming. While sitting in the park block bench 2 weeks ago, I introduced myself to a Native American veteran who was walking home through the blocks. He explained how the park gave him relief from his health problems and life and gave him a needed relationship with nature. When I explained some of the park block plans, he recoiled, explaining that the trees were personally sacred to him, and he hoped every one of them would remain. These park blocks are a sanctuary of respite and restoration, and an oasis of calm and peace centered in a concrete, metal, and glass city that is growing and changing. Change is all around the South Park blocks as the city grows with new ideas, new buildings, new businesses, and new energy. Now, it takes courage and imagination to press forward with new plans and new ideas, but I believe it takes equal courage to understand and preserve the human restorative value of this oasis in the midst of constant city change. Tomorrow, I will ask you to vote no on the proposed South Park Blocks Master Plan. But there are alternatives to this plan. Namely, you can ask parks to create a tree maintenance plan to assure the optimum life of the existing trees, and you can ask parks and PBOT to separate out the green loop from its own plan. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Walter. Appreciate it. Next individual, please, Keelan, item 546.
Request of Caitlin Day to address council regarding the clean and safe contract renewal and enhanced services district audit.
Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. So I'm with Western Regional Advocacy Project and Stop the Sweeps, and part of the community coalition with some concerns of the upcoming Clean Safe contract. Thank you for responding to our letter and repeated communications regarding listening sessions for the Clean Safe contract. With that said, many of us have concerns with how the listening sessions are structured, however. For one, Portland Business Alliance and Clean and Safe are hosting them with help from the city, but it became clear they are the ones running the show. We understand why, as they are the ones contracting all of the services. However, ultimately, City Council votes on the contract, and you all can intervene and mandate certain things through city code. So secondly, not all city commissioners were informed of the listening session, which goes back to my last point. Ultimately, you all approve the contract and need to be fully invested in these listening sessions. We also found out the auditor who did the ESD audit wasn't even fully informed of the details of these listening sessions, and we believe this to be a huge oversight on OMF's part. To be clear, I'm not shaming you all. This is more towards OMF. Rather, I want you all to be aware because I don't think it's right that you all are not being fully included in these sessions. Public participation in listening sessions are extremely limited as well. We understand the desire to have focused listening sessions. However, the first listening session ended 40 minutes early. It easily could have been used to listen to general testimony towards the end, much like how many of the budget forums are structured. Furthermore, we know of at least one small business who's never called on to speak despite being within the clean and safe boundaries. And even more egregiously, we did hear of one person being intimidated by clean and safe leadership after their testimony for being mildly critical. Many small businesses have expressed fear of speaking out for some of these reasons. Finally, and this is really the elephant in the room, this contract directly impacts unhoused people. I would argue it impacts unhoused people more than the property owners who pay into the district. They are receiving the brunt of interactions with private security and the police officers contracted by Clean and Safe. There needs to be some serious intentional outreach to people who are most affected. The citywide listening sessions will provide some opportunity, but it's not enough. This is especially pertinent considering many of these officers are armed. And a few months ago, a private security officer from Cornerstone Security shot and killed someone in a Lowe's parking lot, and there has been zero accountability. God forbid something similar happen with a Portland Patrol officer. And it is clear both from the audit and from public records we received that Portland Patrol is extremely secretive, asserting they are a private company. But the fact of the matter is they patrol in public space. I want to take this time to remind you, PSEP has also recently recommended you remove private security patrols from public space. And I really think you should support and implement those recommendations. And to wrap up, although this is a way longer discussion and I've only scratched the surface, these issues need to be addressed as both a contract renewal is quickly approaching, but also there will be a one-year review next month from the auditor's office regarding ESDs. And last time we spoke to council, Mayor Wheeler offered to set up a meeting with Portland Business Alliance. We are potentially open to that, but also a little trepidatious. I think there need to be some ground rules and we'd want things on our terms and not on Portland Business Alliance's. Many of us were involved in the Central East Side formation and we're frustrated with how some of the meetings with CEIC went. That's kind of another conversation, so I'll leave it there and open to any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to say thank you, Caitlin, for your longtime advocacy around these enhanced service districts. I am paying close attention to the contract as we start developing the new RFP, because I agree with you, especially around security. There has not been the transparency that we need to have. And you're also correct with the person that was killed recently. I've heard nothing about the outcome of that case either, whether there was any arrest or investigation. So you've raised some really good points, and I really appreciate your years of advocacy around making sure that these ESDs serve the community and not just a very small self-interest. Thank you.
Next individual, please, Keelan, item 547.
Request of Lori McFarlane to address council regarding a Filters First program until chronic lead in drinking water levels is fixed.
And I noticed, Keelan, that Dee White has signed up to speak on the same item. I don't know if they want to speak at the same time.
I believe they want to speak separately.
Very good. Welcome, Lori.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound great.
Great. On behalf of Advocates for Lead-Free Drinking Water, last month we quoted President Biden, who said there's hundreds of Flints, renewing awareness of environmental injustice here and elsewhere. Portland's chronic levels are not because of lead in plumbing per se, and none of us should tolerate the Bureau's confusing information about our drinking water. After Newark schools found lead in 2016, residents eventually learned citywide treatment issues were damaging lead-bearing plumbing that leached lead into drinking water. Just 1 week ago, Newark announced they are now half Portland's level, achieved through the successful three-pronged strategy using Filters First for primary prevention. Perhaps you'd prefer hearing from our experts like Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha. Afterwards, can you tell us why city-provided water filters are not a good idea for our most vulnerable until the city fixes their lead and water problem? Okay, Keelan, please, can you show the clip?
Open sign. Okay, here we go.
Thanks.
When a pediatrician hears the word lead, there's nothing more to say that, but we freak out. We freak out when we hear the word lead. Lead is probably the most well-studied neurotoxins, poisons ever known. We've known about what lead has done for centuries.
I'm a pediatrician, which means I literally took an oath to protect children. I did the research that kind of uncovered the rising blood lead levels in Flint. And when that came out, it was dismissed and denied and attacked by those who were telling us that the water was safe. And when the pediatrician hears the word lead, you can't say anything to reassure us. You just stop what you're doing and you need to learn more, you need to act. Every agency tells us, from the CDC to the American Academy of Pediatrics, that there's no safe level of lead. Lead is a potent, irreversible neurotoxin. It impacts almost every organ system and really every age population. But we worry about the children the most because they're the most developmentally vulnerable, especially children under the age of 6. Once it is in your body and causes that neurotoxicity, it impacts your nervous system, your development. It impacts cognition, which is how we think. So it drops children's IQ levels. It impacts behavior, how kids act, and it can lead to attention problems and behavioral problems, conduct disorders, criminality. So fundamental functionings of a child. Once it is in your bones, it can come back out at future times. If you are, for example, stressed or pregnant or have poor nutrition in the future, it can come back out of your bones and cause that neurotoxicity all over again. There's no good thing about lead. It's not supposed to be in our bodies. But unfortunately, we continue to live with the legacy of lead, be it underneath layers of paint or under soil from gasoline contamination, but also in our drinking water infrastructure. So it is so hard to believe, but we actually have a known neurotoxin delivering the drinking water to much of our nation's infrastructure. It is something we need to act on. It's something that we need to truly respect the science on. We need to move towards primary prevention to make sure that no child is ever exposed to lead.
And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Very good. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Do you struggle with belly fat and nothing works to get it, or
Is 548. Keelan. Next individual, item 548, please.
Request of D. White to address council regarding a filters first program until chronic lead in drinking water levels is fixed.
Good morning, Dee.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound good.
All right, great. Good morning. My name is Dee White. After Portland's recent heat and public health disaster, an advocate asked us to share this, and I quote, "The last weekend in June will go down in history for the heat wave itself and the tragic loss of life. At least 71 in our county. That's more than in the Vanport flood or Mount St. Helens eruption. We wonder if we could have done more. Luckily, some did a lot, and this council thanked those mutual aid organizations and their employees who rose to the occasion. But sadly, those whom we elected for these very moments did not. Portland Police Bureau responded that they, quote, maybe gave a few rides, end quote, but could not confirm. The Bureau of Emergency Management was distant. Police Commissioner Wheeler went to his daughter's swim meet. In one of our most dire hours, what did Mayor Wheeler do besides show up to promote downtown business on Monday, June the 28th? Portlanders demand apologies, action plans, and a resignation, end quote. Keelan, could you please launch the bar chart? This shows Portland Water Bureau's drinking water lead levels as compared to other water systems in the Northwest. Thank you, Keelan. We are grateful for the national experts, scientists, and citizen advocates willing to inform us accurately and completely about lead in drinking water when our own water officials have not. We are deeply troubled that Portland Water Director Salmer, her communication staff, and legal teams have suppressed critical facts and have silenced urban and rural residents alike. No town halls were held for the Water Bureau's recent lead action level exceedances in 2016 and 17. Without full disclosure, the public remains in the dark and council decisions ill-informed. The same can be said for the planned $1.5 billion filtration plant, the most expensive treatment option at the most expensive location. Yet a sliver of funding will finance an inadequate response to Portland's long-standing lead and drinking water problem. We've witnessed misinformed commissioners and pub oversight members through no fault of their own. Water Director Salmer does not correct when she hears these inaccuracies on water lead. Asked why not, she said, quote, "It is not within the Bureau's purview to intervene during discussions among pub members who speak to their own experiences. Rather, the Bureau is a resource when called upon by pub members, end quote. By ignoring the lessons of Flint, leaders harm our health and betray the public trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Next up is item number, next individual 549, please.
Request of John Carter to address council regarding bottoms-up rebuilding of Portland.
Good morning, John.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Cool. Yeah, I was motivated to testify. It's been a while. I felt like the South Park Blocks plan was kind of emblematic of this top-down approach. It's a $35 million project with tons of concrete, and I'm like, boy, man, really, people could, if you just open up the doors for citizens to really engage and handle the project themselves, it could be a lot more affordable. What I've been seeing for years in Portland is this top-down kind of technocratic approach to solving problems, like this kind of growth at all costs will be itself be a solution, and we've seen that it's not. I think that there needs to be a new consensus, and that we have to facilitate the conditions for a new active civic life, where smart growth and quality of life are the goal, where the brilliant ingenuity of our people can be allowed to shine. And I think there's some ideas that I have to make this into a reality. Some I've said before, others are new. But I want to stress the broader point, which is that Portland needs to be different rather than a copy and paste of every other Democrat-run city, or Republican-run city for that matter. In the city center, which could be truly our jewel of the city, anyone allowed to vend, sell, and create in the streets should be allowed to remove the dead space that is so common downtown. We should close off roads in the city center, rewild these roads. I mean, we've seen with the heat wave that we had that like adaptation to climate change is the goal, not we can't fight it. We have to adapt to it. So like we need more trees. We need less concrete. We need to create car-free places for people to gather and create. No more demolitions. We have such beautiful architecture in our core, and it's an asset that we should cherish. Adaptive reuse should be the goal. We need to free up the golf courses for small-scale development, allow Portlanders to build what they will there, rather than trying to micromanage and control through codes. You'll see some amazing things come from this. Vacancy tax, there's so much empty space. I study the commercial real estate market, and there's so much empty space that is languishing. We really need to activate this space. I see spaces that are just vacant for years. You told me this was in the works. I'm curious where you're at with it and like what that policy would look like. I would love to see a moratorium on national corporate chains and mega storage units setting up shop within the city limits. It's really killing our landscape. It's the amount of Dollar Trees that I see opening up show a city in decay and not one on the rise. And I think we need to get people like involved and like open the doors and like less regulations for individuals and more regulations for corporations. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your testimony. That completes communications, colleagues. Keelan, have any items been pulled off of the consent agenda?
We've had no requests.
Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Next item is off of the time certain agenda. We'll go to time certain item number 550. That's a non-emergency ordinance.
Authorize 3-year agreement with the Regional Arts and Culture Council to administer arts programs for the city and provide for payment.
Colleagues, I'm pleased to jointly introduce this item with Commissioner Rubio, the city's liaison to the Regional Arts and Culture Council. This ordinance authorizes the continuation of a long and, in my opinion, very successful relationship between the city of Portland and RAC, which dates all the way back to 1995. RAC serves, of course, as our established agent for supporting artists and art organizations here in the city of Portland. They play a key role in cultivating creativity in our community, which is, of course, vital to our economy. With that, I'll turn this over to Commissioner Rubio. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor. As the liaison to RAC, I'm excited to bring this agreement to Council. Arts and culture are a part of our DNA as a city, and the last 16 months have made crystal clear that artists and art organizations are essential to our economy and also to our emotional feeling. And looking back at this time, I am grateful that this Council continues to affirm the importance of public funding to support culture, creativity, and the arts in Portland. For 26 years, the Regional Arts and Culture Council has delivered most of the city's public art services, which includes grant making to artists and city public art program management. And in 2012, Portland voters approved for the first time the Arts Education and Access Fund, which generated additional resources to support arts education in our public schools and art access in every corner of the city. These programs, together with a dedicated leadership and vision from the board and staff of RAC, ensure the artistic heartbeat of our city that continues, even when we are in challenging times. And in a few moments, Madison Cario and Carol Tatch of RAC and the board vice chair, Leslie Heilbrunn, will share more details about RAC's work and impact. But first, I'd like to introduce Jeff Hawthorne, the city's arts program manager, to give us an overview of this new 3-year agreement.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio, and good morning, Mayor Wheeler and City Council. For the record, my name is Jeff Hawthorne, and I am the City Arts Program Manager. The ordinance before you today will authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to execute an agreement with the Regional Arts and Culture Council to administer a variety of arts services on the city's behalf. These services include grants to artists and nonprofit organizations, coordinating arts education services in our schools, and managing the city's public art collection. This contract also covers the city's 3 funding streams that support arts and culture, and RAC specifically. That includes a general fund special appropriation, which will start at $3.77 million this year, with a cost of living increase in years 2 and 3. The Arts Education and Access Fund, commonly known as the Arts Tax, which generates about $3 million a year for grants and arts education services at RAC, although collections were down significantly this past year. And lastly, the 2% for Art Ordinance and the 2% for Art Program, which dedicates 2% of any publicly funded capital construction project to the acquisition and maintenance of public art. And that 2% gets broken down into the allocations you see here on this slide. One of our goals in this new agreement was to make it easier to understand these funding streams and the various services that RAC provides in return. We completely rewrote the contract this year in collaboration with the City Attorney's Office, and I'd like to thank Maya Hyam for her partnership in this new approach. This agreement establishes a quarterly reporting schedule, and we have developed new performance measures to track how RAC and the city are working together to ensure that everyone has access to arts and culture in our community, with a particular focus on underrepresented communities. This fiscal year will be focused on Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, and multiracial communities, LGBTQIA communities, and individuals with disabilities. And we will continue working together to identify other disparities during the course of this contract. This agreement is for 3 years. And during this time, the city will complete a comprehensive cultural planning process, which may reveal new goals and priorities for arts and culture in the city of Portland, which we will address in future agreements between RAC and the city. I'd like to thank Commissioner Rubio and Cynthia Castro and Mona Schwartz in her office and the leadership team at RAC for their collaboration in this agreement. Tom Reinhardt is also on the call with us today, and he and I will be available to answer any technical questions that may arise. But for now, I'd like to turn it over to Madison Cario, the Executive Director at RAC. or to Carol.
Nope, Madison's queued.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. My name is Madison Cario. I use the pronouns they and them, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Regional Arts and Culture Council, otherwise known as RAC. Slide, please. I wanted to start off our time together by saying thank you. Thank you for your continued commitment and investment across the arts and culture sector and to RAC. Arts and culture takes various forms and influences many facets of public life here in the city. Beyond the tremendous economic impact from the sector, art matters. It's at the core of everything we do. Artists inspire, delight, question, challenge, connect, provoke, and teach us. As we think about equity, community development, and recovery for Portland in the years ahead, I think we can all agree that art and culture is the light that will bring our communities together and an essential part of all of our work, which will help us reach the goals we've laid out together. Slide, please. Before we get into the heart of our presentation this morning, I wanted to take a few minutes to reintroduce you to us, to RAC, and to our relationship with the city of Portland. Like that favorite article of clothing that you've kept for many, many years, you know, the one that comes into mind, our long-standing partnership with the city has been through many washings and foldings. Sometimes we get folded up neatly and placed together on the shelf, and sometimes we get crammed into an overfull backpack as we run from meeting to meeting. But either way, this partnership, like our commitment to hanging on to and caring for that article of clothing, continues. Together, we have grown and changed, innovating to find new and wonderful ways to build onto our shared objective of supporting the diverse creative sector here in Portland. I'm proud of us. I am proud of the work that we have done together, and I'm incredibly proud of this new contract, my first 3-year contract since arriving in Portland. So I'm proud of the phenomenal efforts the RAC team, board, Commissioner Rubio and her team, and of course, the City Arts Program Manager, Jeff Hawthorne, has put in to create the document you have before you. About us, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we do a lot of things. We're perhaps best known for our work in grant making, supporting arts education, and of course, public art. Perhaps lesser known, but just as important is the work we do in professional development, advocacy, and fundraising. These are 3 areas we're looking to grow over the next several years. Across the community, we are known not only for what we do, but how we do it. That's really the magic of RAC. We are human-centered, and we embed equity in our processes, programs, and services. When people call, artists, administrators, creatives, community members, we answer the phone. When they email, we respond. We are listening. We are innovating. We are RAC, and we're your partner. Slide, please. And we've been your partner since 1973. How amazing is that? So while we've had the honor of serving this community as a nonprofit for over 25 years, we've been working together for almost 50. I'm going to turn it over to Carol Tatch now, our Director of Philanthropic Innovation, to take you through some brief highlights of our time together. Carol?
Hello, my name is Carol Tatch. I'm the Director of Philanthropic Innovation here at RAC. I go by she, her pronouns. It is my pleasure to greet everyone in the room, our virtual room, and to say that it is absolutely my pleasure to be a part of the team here at RAC, who is so dedicated to arts, who are such dedicated arts forward individuals. In the brief time that I've been here since last August, I've had the opportunity to interact and engage with commissioners at the city and the county levels, and to see the reputation that RAC carries forward into those spaces has been amazing. And it started a long time ago. As Madison mentioned, we are nearing 50 years of partnership. And in fact, through some of the gray areas of the time before 1973, it's actually been longer. But through this time, some very major things happened to support the work that we do. Including just the development of the Metropolitan's Art Commission, which is a partnership with Portland and Multnomah County in 1973 that really started things and pulled our programs together. the arts plan that happens, Arts Plan 2000 that happened in 92. And then probably most pivotal of all of this and very much central to the slide and to our work together is the establishment of RAC as a 501c3, as a nonprofit that could independently work, be a connection between the community and the city and all of our government partners to make sure that we put forward the needs of our creative community, the individuals and the organizations to the work that needs to be done. And we have done that. We signed an IGA in 1995 with the cities, the counties, and Metro, and which Clackamas County gratefully joined in 1999. And we have carried that partnership forward through some incredible additional additions to the work that we do, including the development of the ordinance for the Arts Education and Access Fund. As Jeff mentioned, it has been known as the Arts Tax. We are rebranding it to its name. Tax carries a negative connotation when really it is an effort that we're using to lift and invigorate the community, specifically our K-5 arts education students. We have reinvigorated that program. I'll talk about that a little more, but the opportunity to center arts education in our schools as a part of the lives of every student in the 6 districts is fundamental to the work that we're able to do as they grow in our community and become useful citizens, as we say. In 2020, RAC created a new strategic framework that will carry us through the FY22. That has allowed us to really focus in on building the infrastructure to do the outer structure work. There's a lot that has happened, and I'm looking forward to telling you more. And please, just the opportunities that we've had even over this past year, especially with the COVID-19, with the pandemic coming through, with Black Lives Matter, have only elevated the work that we're doing and allowed us to engage our community better. So back to Madison.
Thank you, Carol.
Sure.
Okay, money matters. We know this. As a reminder, the arts and culture sector does more than connect, inspire, and educate. They're a key economic driver, both directly and as a value add. As you can see here on the slide, from data collected nationally and shared out in 2017, the nonprofit arts sector in Portland generated a total of $687 million. Of that, $364 million was direct economic activity from arts organizations, and then their audiences of almost 10 million added another 323 million. What's of note for Portland, that is approximately 2/3 of these audiences are local. So these are residents. So an investment in the arts is an investment felt directly by the Portland community. All of this activity generated an additional 43 million in local and state government revenues. Slide, please. Okay, I couldn't do a presentation without talking about COVID. So on the flip side, the data you're looking at here on this slide covers a period between March 2020 and February 2021. After more than a year and a half enduring the pandemic, the arts and cultural industries remain among the hardest hit by the economic crises. The full scope and scale of the impact can actually be hard to discern, in part because of the size and diversity of the sector, but also because what's not on the slide, right? It's important to keep in mind when looking at this data specifically, and much of the data collected to date, does not reflect individuals who are self-employed, or does it reflect those who work within our sector that don't self-select this title of artist or arts organization or identify their work as art? So the impact on our community here in Portland is actually much greater. This makes RAC's work in community building and advocacy that much more important. I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Carol now, who's going to take us through some brief highlights in fiscal year 21 and a look ahead at the next 3 years. Before I do that, though, you see that 19% on this slide. 19% of our organizations here are not confident of their survival. And that is 6 points higher than the average for the state of Oregon and 8 points higher than the national average. It is something that we're keeping an eye on at RAC to see how we can better support these organizations and build a better city together. Carol.
Yes. Next slide, please. Thank you. Where have we been? What are our highlights? To quote Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? What have we done for the city and for the community? FY21 was very busy. I was the opportunity to come in at the front end of that. To come into an organization that with Madison's leadership as a new executive director, a change in our infrastructure and the invigoration of a different kind of culture. We are a team. We consider ourselves teammates in the work that has to happen from our board down to well, there's no down because we're a team. It's all through there. In FY21, we had the opportunity to capture the moment. We had the opportunity to center artists in the recovery process, thanks to funding that came through so many wonderful sources, including the city, 2.5 million from Prosper Portland, 190,000 from the city of Portland, with Support Beam and Capture the Moment, 2 grants from the NEA that allowed us to really start looking into funding our work around racial equity. All of these happened in FY21. It allowed us to have money come in and then go right back out to our community. 86% of the funding that we brought in went right back out. That is something notable, and to understand that is our commitment to the community. We shifted our support for arts educators. What does that mean? We have a dedicated person who works primarily for the work of the Arts Education and Access Fund. And in that time, the work that Shonda has done has been to illuminate the areas of inequity. How do we fill those gaps? How do we support our teachers, especially during the year that COVID-19 threw at us? How do we make sure that they stayed supported? We work with them literally one-on-one. I was able to attend several of the meetings that we had with our arts liaison educators and to hear the stories, help them meet the challenges, and then offer solutions, including opportunities for workshops. That is what the Arts Education and Access Fund is doing now in this community. It's creating the space for people to grow and to lean in to help our students also survive this very challenging time. We have new community partners. We found new artists. Our public arts projects program just blossomed during this time. We were able to be advocates for CARES funding for the arts, and we partnered in granting out $15.7 million. Now, in addition to that, Madison met with national partners about how do we make sure not just the CARES funding, but the following ARPA funding. How could we make sure that got back out into our community to support the work that needs to be done? How do we keep our artists and creatives supported? That was at the table, and we made sure that we were at those tables in order to do that work. And most important of all, and what really has allowed us to go through the work that we're doing, is we completed our first strategic framework. It was created in June, so before my arrival, but when I got here, it was part of my interview process. I jumped right in. I keep it on my wall. It becomes a sounding point for how we will engage with our community with equity, with clarity, with engagement, and with intention. We lead forward into those spaces to make sure that our community is supported. Next slide, please. Where are we going together? These are the points brought up when Jeff did the introductory. We have our words a little different, but only in that we have them spaced in the language of RAC, how we want to go out and work with the community. These are expanded in the next 4 slides. So if I could have the next slide, please. How will we do our equity, diversity, inclusion, and access work? It's already started. We had surveys that went out in the fall, and we were informed there was a spring survey also with the Arts Education and Access Fund teachers, because of course, COVID hit in the spring. What do you need? How can we help? What are the challenges? We brought that into our fall with a community-wide survey. And then we had a focus group of BIPOC community artists and creatives to find out intensely about what about RAC? What is it that RAC can do to help you? How can we best support you? Setting new benchmarks, what are the things we need to strive for in order to make sure the work that we do, both to support the contract and to support the work of RAC, are happening? How do we make sure our underrepresented communities feel like they have a voice and have a place? And we helped that out by inviting them to the table. We literally said, please help us determine, make decisions for, help us lead in this space. And we did that. We try to make sure that we're supporting here at RAC an equity-centered organizational culture. Again, as I mentioned before, there was an intense restructure of the organization. Our intent is to lean forward and lean into the spaces where we are lifting equity and access. Next slide, please. How are we increasing our investments? This is one of my favorite spaces, not just because philanthropic innovation and fundraising and community engagement and advocacy, but I say this is how we invest in the change we want to see. We have to know ourselves in order to understand the community. And then we have to have the community help us understand ourselves. So again, how do we make sure that we are increasing the amount of money that's going back out into the community? How do we have the conversations at the city level to maximize and leverage the work that we're doing? We have the same conversations with our county partners. How can we make sure that in many ways we are maximizing out the investment that the community has placed in RAC to go back out in the community? We establish those benchmarks to know what goals we're trying to meet, and then we continue to make those partnerships at the private sector level, the federal and the municipal support levels about how we can make sure the communities stay supported. Increasing the percentage of funding provided to artists and underrepresented communities that is, front and center of the work that the city has asked us to do and that we've already started doing. Next slide, please. How do we best serve equals meeting community needs. We've done surveys, we will continue to do them. We uplifted feedback opportunities. We've created cohorts and focus groups to help inform the work that we're doing. We invite people to be in the space and we'll look to have, once our spaces open back up again, look to be invited into those spaces to have the conversations to both provide input, but then, we sit in a specific space as funders to listen. How do we listen? How do we lean in? How do we learn? And then how do we leverage that back out to the community and say, you've told us what you need. Is this what you asked us for? And then sharing our findings with our city partners is, of course, the best way to get this information out and about. It informs the work that, the next set of goals that we want to reach and opportunities that we have to really engage with our community. We sit in a space where we want to pay it forward. We talk about our learnings, we share our learnings, we share the knowledge that we've gleaned and that others have brought to us. And then we make sure that the passion for art and creativity in the community stays amped up in a space that allows them to engage as well. Next slide, please. And then how do we advocate and raise awareness? With our new advocates, we actually have an advocacy manager now who's spent his time since January really connecting with the community. Hopefully folks, commissioners and the mayor, you were able to participate in some of the Arts Advocacy Day activities that happened. There was a wonderful panel, of course, but then that space where we levitate and activate. How do we lift up out of the space of RAC out into the community and activate our partners to do the work that needs to do? All of these, of course, as with the other ones, we will be setting those benchmarks, understanding what our goals are, listening, learning, and leaning in to figure out what the next can be, and then making sure that access to that information, that there's equity that's in the space of determining the work that we do, and that we have indeed brought our community along with us. Next slide, please. And then, of course, how do we spread that love? We are better together in the work that we do. This partnership has been wonderful. I learn something new every day, just learned something new from Madison this morning. It is my goal to continue to learn, to lean in, to listen, to connect with you, commissioners, to connect with you, the mayor, and to connect with others in the community who can best help us understand what's needed in this space. Next slide, please. And again, we're better together. The logo that you see is one of the ways we reached out into the community this spring. We created a logo contest in the 6 districts where the Arts, Education, and Access Fund is distributed. And our winner was Vincent, who's in the 3rd grade at Rose City Park PPS group, school. And we have had just a wonderful time really understanding the work that we can do and that is set before us to do in this community. Thank you very much. Next slide will bring us to our questions. So if there are any, Madison and I are here to answer them.
I'm not seeing any at this particular point. Commissioner Rubio, did you have invited testimony?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do. I'd like to invite RAC Board Chair Leslie Heilbrunn to speak.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Leslie Heilbrunn. I'm the Vice Chair of RAC's board, designated to serve on behalf of Portland. The arts are so important to Portland's identity, to our economy, and our sense of community. And I'm so pleased that after a few years of transition, it feels like RAC has reached a much needed stability in leadership and funding. With Commissioner Rubio in place as the Arts Commissioner and Jeff Hawthorne serving as the City Arts Program Manager, and now this new 3-year contract, we have key elements in place for Madison to effectively lead this organization and realize their vision for RAC. It is really exciting for us. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie.
If there's no questions, Commissioner Rubio, should we seek public testimony?
Sure, yes.
Very good. Keelan?
No one is signed up for this item.
All right. And Commissioner Rubio, I understand you might want to introduce an amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to add an emergency clause to the ordinance and revise the RAC agreement's effective date from August 23, 2021 to July 1st, 2021. And, I'll finish. Should I finish reading it and then?
Go ahead and read it.
Please.
The emergency clause shall read, the council declares that an emergency exists because delaying payment to RAC would negatively impact artists and organizations working to support Portland's economic recovery and emotional healing. Accordingly, the agreement's effective date in section 3A is revised from August 23, 2021 to July 1st, 2021. And this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage by the council.
Second.
We have a motion for an emergency clause. We have a second from Commissioner Hardesty. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
I want to thank Mattis. Oh, this is for the emergency clause. Okay, got it. Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment is adopted to the main motion. Any further discussion prior to the roll? Seeing none, please call the roll.
I see Commissioner Ryan's hand up, but.
Very good. Commissioner Ryan, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. And thank you, Madison. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Carol. That was that was refreshing, actually. We all could use your positivity. I have a couple of questions, and sometimes I'm embarrassed to ask questions because I should know better maybe, but I got confused about Clackamas County was added in 1999. I think I always thought of this as just a City of Portland entity. Did I get lost and go down a rabbit hole that's not necessary? Are we actually beyond the City of Portland with those partnerships? Could you just explain that to me? I thought I knew better until I watched the slideshow.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ryan. So there's an IGA. So the IGA includes Multnomah, Clackamas, Washington, and Metro as additional partners. So RAC is regional, but our conversation and what we're talking about today is really what we do for and with the city.
That makes sense. And then the boundaries or the bumpers, if you will, on the financing is all directed within the city. I saw Jeff go like this. Okay, good. That's what I assumed, but I thought since I watched the slideshow, I needed to clarify that. The other question I have is, first of all, I'm really supportive of everything I heard. And I was a big fan of including K through 5 into the RAC web, if you will, of services and inclusion. Big advocate for that. I didn't see anything about one of the premises of gaining more revenue is that Portland has a really high class appetite for arts. And sometimes we're, let's say we don't have the same amount of purse as some cities with that same appetite. And so I know some of the bigger arts organizations are really enthusiastic about gaining more revenue. Are they still part of receiving revenue from when we go to the voters and to all of us to pay our arts, I don't want to say that word, to pay whatever you want us to call that?
Yes, the Arts Education Access Fund.
There you go. I got to get that down. Yeah.
Maybe the Arts Fund or the
Arts Fund. That sounds good. I'm going to say Arts Fund from now.
Okay. I'll leave that up to Jeff and team to kind of. But the answer is yes, Commissioner. Every organization that's part of general operating support will continue to be a part of general operating support, and that is where some of the larger organizations get annual funding from RAC.
I appreciate that. And I think I want to just acknowledge that I've seen some really good concrete efforts by our large arts organizations to lean into inclusion and diversity and equity. And I think all great cities have great arts organizations that are kind of the pillars and the foundation. And I think as we continue to lean into what's right, we continue to be inclusive and lift them up as well. Sometimes I feel like that gets left out of the dialogue. And I just think we all need to keep building upon that unification as an arts community. So that wasn't a dig as much as me wanting to lift that up because I didn't see it in the presentation, that's all. And yes, I worked at one of those large organizations in a prior life. So yeah, there's that. Thanks.
Certainly. Thank you for your questions.
Any further questions? Seeing none, please call the roll on the main motion as amended.
Hardesty.
Madison, thank you so much. You inspire every time you come in front of this council. Carol, you add a level of expertise to RAC that is really critical as we start forward thinking about where we're headed. Jeff, your management of this program and your responsiveness to the moment is really greatly appreciated. All of us have had to be flexible over the last 16 months, and nothing more so than artists and how we interact with artists and how we support artists and how we continue to be a city of great art, artists, and music. And we could not do it without RAC's intentionality and without the real clear partnership. Commissioner Rubio I know her heart is absolutely into ensuring that RAC is as excellent as it can possibly be. And I look forward to continuing to partner with her and the mayor on making sure that art is continuously, the K-5 is good, but I got to tell you, elders love arts too. And so we need to make sure that we have arts available at every income level, at every age level, and that it becomes more community focused. Some of my work with PBOT is really around creating these kind of community spaces where art and music can coexist within walking distance from people's homes. So we have a lot of work to do, but I am so grateful for the leadership, the vision, and the partnership with RAC that will take us into recovery in a way that really values our historic artist nature and music nature. In fact, that's what kept me in Portland it was the music that kept me here when I first got here. So I'm happy to vote aye.
Maps.
I'd like to thank the presenters for that excellent presentation. I appreciate RAC's role in bringing the arts to the Portland metro area. And I also really appreciate the influence of the arts in helping our city recover both economically and emotionally from the COVID crisis. And for those reasons, I vote aye.
Rubio.
Thank you, Madison and Carol, for joining us today and for providing such a compelling success story about your important work that you're doing at RAC. And thanks to Leslie also for being here today and for your service on the RAC board. I also want to thank Jeff for his organization and leadership through the development of this contract as well. No industry has been more deeply impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic than our arts and culture sector. And thousands of performances and exhibits had to be canceled over the last year and a half, leaving hundreds of artists and art industry workers without jobs. So we're so grateful that the federal government and the state of Oregon have stepped in, and also the city is stepping up with this important emergency relief. And now we're thrilled to be planning the return of arts experiences throughout the whole city. And I want to really not let the moment pass by without lifting up how much RAC has supported our artists and arts organizations during this time. In response, they immediately pivoted their grant programs in response to the pandemic, and they invested in artists who were capturing the moment through art and music and video recorded performances. And as we heard in the presentation, they also advocated very strongly for state and federal emergency relief, and also helped raise relief funds from private sector as well. I'm also really happy to see them taking meaningful steps to improve the experience of Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists in our regional arts ecosystem, which is very important and which has for years been dominated by white artists primarily. And experiencing art produced during this last year and a half, not only because of the pandemic and also through the demands for racial justice, and especially with the diversity of artists who have been producing those experiences and communities that were most impacted at every level, is a very emotional one. And it's a constant reminder of our resiliency as a city and the beauty that lives here. And these things keep me going, and they gave me hope. So I'm really happy to see us taking a moment to celebrate this important work here. So I want to thank RAC, artists, musicians, and arts organizations for continuing to bring your creativity to our community that helps lift all of us up during this last year and a half, and also now and in the future. So very excited for the work and looking forward to the years to come. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yes. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Rubio, for your leadership. You're such a good fit for this role. And Jeff, Madison, Carol, and Leslie, all of you, your presentations were wonderful. Your words were, let's just say we could all use, it was refreshing to have this report today. And it reminds us that art truly does save lives. And I think when I was looking at the slides, the one that actually was so gripping was that 19% said they weren't confident of survival and 73% are having a severe financial impact. So that's 92% of all your respondees. So I guess 8% either didn't answer the question or are doing fine. That's pretty deep. And if you couple that with the true statements that were made about the economic impact of the arts, and you connect those two dots, and we talk about economic revival, economic survival, economic prosperity is one of our top 3 priorities. It's really a part of what we're discussing today. This is a part of our economy that's sometimes gets marginalized. And as someone that comes from the arts background, I also think that it's just very important that we also look at, and this is where I wanted to personally loop back to you with my office, is some creative dialogue about housing and as it connects to the artists that gather in our city. I know Portland over the decades has really benefited from having better price points for housing. And that's one reason we've always attracted artists. I knew that from being at the School of Fine and Performing Arts at Portland State. So I think we do have a lot of concerns collectively right now about where artists can live in Portland and in our surrounding area. So I just wanted to put that out. But in general, I'm just so honored to support this ordinance that will advance development and boost our city's arts programs. I'm an enthusiastic guy.
Ryan. Oh, I'm sorry, Wheeler.
Well, I also want to extend my sincere gratitude to everyone who joined us today, Jeff and Madison and Carol and Leslie for your thoughtful presentations as well as your discussion of this ordinance. RAC has been a strong partner with the City of Portland for the past 26 years, working to build Portland's reputation and the reality around our creative center. As Commissioner Rubio said, arts and culture are vital both to our economic recovery as well as to the emotional healing that's definitely necessary after the last, at this point, 14, 15 months. I think all of us here deeply appreciate the resilience artists and arts organizations have shown. Thank you for your service as our second responders, in many regards, helping us to reflect, recover, and rebuild the city of Portland. So again, many thanks, and this was a terrific report today. I'm appreciative. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Thank you. And we'll move to the second time certain. Yep, we're well in line here. This is a resolution, item 551, please.
Appoint Brenda Ketta to the Charter Commission for term to expire December 3rd, 2022.
Colleagues, this resolution fills a vacancy on the Charter Commission, which was created by the resignation of Commissioner Angie Morrill. I want to thank all council offices for using a collaborative one city approach to fill this vacancy. Council offices followed the same approach to fill this vacancy as we've done with initial appointments, meaning that we use the original applicant pool and the previously agreed upon shared selection criteria to make this selection. I'm pleased to share that Brenda Ketta was selected to fill the vacancy. Since 2011, Brenda has served as the executive director of the Home Builders Foundation Homemade Portland, which is a local nonprofit whose mission is to provide safe and dignified housing for people who are experiencing houselessness. Brenda is also incredibly active in her North Portland neighborhood. She established a food backpack program for students facing food insecurity, and she serves on the Portland Council PTA Board of Directors. Brenda is here with us today, and we've invited her to share a few words with us, if she'd like, about herself and why she would like to serve. So with that, Brenda, would you like to say a few words, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your interest in serving?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. And yes, I'm Brenda Ketta, Executive Director of the Home Builders Foundation. I live in the Humboldt neighborhood of North Portland, which I've been pretty active in, and I'm an Alaska native. Actually just got back from Alaska for vacation. So excited to be back. And yeah, I'm just really excited for the opportunity to serve on the commission, to be part of making a long-term historic change possibly to the way the city functions. And you know, I have kids, I have teenagers, so you know, I'm I'm interested in what's happening in our city. So I'm just excited to be able to serve. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Brenda. Colleagues, any questions before I ask for public testimony? Keelan, do we have anybody signed up for this resolution?
No.
Very good. If there are no questions, colleagues, we will call the roll. Keelan?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Hardesty.
Brenda, thank you so much for your willingness to serve in this very vital role. I would encourage you to be open-minded, listen to the community far and wide, and own your independence to be able to independently hear from the public what it is they'd like you to move forward as their representative. Thank you for your willingness to serve, and I'm very happy to vote aye.
Maps.
I'd like to thank Brenda for your service to our city. I think the Charter Review Commission is one of the most important projects happening in Portland right now. I very much look forward to the ideas that you are going to craft over the current months, and that work is going to make Portland better, I hope. And for these reasons, I vote aye.
Rubio.
Brenda, thank you so much for your current service. in the community in your current roles and your willingness to serve in this important one. Just like my other colleagues have said, you're bringing so many important perspectives to this work, and we're really, really grateful that you're committing to do this work together with the city. I'm looking forward to following your thoughtful deliberations as the Charter Commission work unfolds in the future. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Brenda, for stepping up to this role. You have a great resume and life experience. I am especially fond of, I had no idea it was you, the food backpack program for our students in low income and are food insecure. So anyway, you definitely have the right heart for this job, and I appreciate you. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I could not be happier to have Brenda serving in this capacity. Brenda, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be high exposure. I think this Charter Review Commission understands there are many things that work very well here in the city of Portland, and there's some things that are fundamentally broken in terms of the governance of the city of Portland. And I have a prediction, and I'm not suggesting any particularly policy or direction here, although I think I'm well on the record on all of the above. I believe the actions of this particular Charter Review Commission will prove to be historic and quite possibly be remembered long after everybody forgets everybody who is sitting on this city council. And so in a sense, I really envy you and your colleagues having this tremendous opportunity before you today in the context in which we all lead. So thank you for stepping up. I know it's going to be a lot of work. The pay isn't particularly good, but you're exactly the right person to serve on behalf of this council. I just want to thank you. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. The appointment's approved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And with that, colleagues, we'll move to the regular agenda. Item number 558, please.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and award of 3 contracts to provide auto body repair services for a 5-year term and total amount not to exceed $4.5 million.
This is a second reading, colleagues. We have already heard a presentation and taken testimony on this item. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll, Keelan.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 559, also a second reading.
Amend a grant agreement with LifeWorks Northwest to provide $110,000 in additional grant funding through June 30, 2022 for the New Options Program.
Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 560.
Accept an engineering report on a proposed encroachment into the public right-of-way for a subsurface tunnel under Southwest Main Street.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. We have before us today an ordinance that will accept an engineering report that details specifications of a potential tunnel that will connect the Multnomah Athletic Club's current parking structure with a future housing development, a block south. This will be an important facility in this dense neighborhood as it will keep driveways from being created in the development, maintain current traffic patterns in a dense neighborhood, and provide a safer pedestrian environment. PBOT staff is here with a short presentation if council members are interested or just have questions that need to be answered. And by the way, this is an emergency ordinance.
Commissioner Hardesty, I have a point of order, if I could interrupt for just a moment. Could I get advice from legal counsel? This is a private athletic club. I am a member, and I want to make sure that I am able to participate in this discussion. And if not, I'll tune off. I'll sign off. Could you give me some indication of whether that is a direct conflict?
Sure, Mayor. The actual developer of the Block 7 property is a separate LLC, which I assume you are not a member of. So your participation as a member of the athletic club is fine, and specifically since you disclosed it.
Very good, thank you. And I honestly have literally nothing to do with this in any capacity as a member of the club. I just go there when I can to work out. So thank you for that. Commissioner Hardesty, back to you. Commissioner Rubio has a question.
I also wanted to disclose that I'm a member as well, although I haven't been there for a while.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Rubio.
Oh, well, now I know how to get in if I ever want to get in.
I was thinking that too.
Right there. I think that's all you need.
I think I'm good. So what's the pleasure, Mayor? We're happy to do a brief presentation if there's a desire for that.
Colleagues, any interest in a presentation, or do you have specific questions? Why don't we get the short version of the presentation? I actually haven't been exposed to this. I'd like to see maybe the 5-minute version.
Excellent. And who I have here today from transportation?
Yes, good morning. It's Bob Haley with PBOT. And I think the clerk has a presentation queued up, hopefully. I'll just keep it going real short. So what you have is the engineer's report for major encroachments. It's at the MAC Club. Next slide, please. This is being reviewed under the document. It's almost 40 years old, encroachments in the public right-of-way. The curious thing, if you can read it, you can take a look at who the council members were when that was adopted. It was Frank Ivesy, Charles Jordan, Michael Lindbergh, Mildred Schwab, and Margaret Stratton. Next slide, please. The site is this vacant block that's across the street from the MAC Club, bounded by Main, 20th and 19th and Madison. Next slide. And then I know the council members are fairly new to these major encroachments. Usually you don't see them. We get 1 or 2 every decade or so, but there are a number of large ones. One is below grade, which is what this one is. We have some examples of the Pioneer Place Mall is underneath some of the right-of-way. You did see the Sky Bridge at Terwilliger Plaza a few months ago that you were in favor of. And then we have arcaded buildings like we have on East Burnside from, say, Grand up to about 12th. Next slide. And then this is just the policies and the guidelines that we use to review them, which are all within that encroachments within the public right-of-way. Next slide. This is the location. It's mid-block between 19th and 20th on Main, connecting a new multifamily building with the existing MAC Club below grade parking structure. Next slide. It's just a cross section. Got 2 lanes and a raised protected sidewalk for the members to walk and cross underneath. Next slide. And there's just a cross section of a profile with the utilities that will be above. We did send out a 30-day utility review to all the utilities that have a franchise agreement, including our own water and sewer bureaus. We have not received any negative comments or concerns. Next slide. And then the city engineer recommends approval of the subject tunnel, and this is a totally private structure built privately with a building permit. I mean, there will be a street opening permit from PBOT, but they will, instead of giving an encroachment permit, which are by definition revocable, not many people who want to invest in this type of thing want a revocable permit where we give them 30 days to remove it. So we do enter into a lease. So this does make some revenue for PBOT and leasing that right of way. And then these are standard conditions that have been in most of what you have seen come forward. And that's the end of my presentation, unless you have any questions.
No, I'm glad you gave that presentation. Thank you. That was actually helpful in terms of context. Colleagues, any questions on this item? Is there any public testimony, Keelan?
No one signed up.
This is an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Thank you. I just want to thank PBAT for their work on preparing this engineering report. It's always a good thing when the private sector development actually creates revenue for a public sector responsibility. So I vote aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Next item, 561, also an emergency ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor. We have sorry.
Keelan, read it, then Commissioner Hardesty.
Yes.
Authorize the Bureau of Transportation to acquire certain permanent and temporary rights necessary for construction of the Outer Division Multimodal Safety Project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. We have before us an ordinance to allow PBAT to acquire temporary construction easements for the important Outer Division Multimodal Improvement Project, a project I know we all support as we work to make Portland streets safer. I will turn it over to Martin Maloney in the Portland Bureau of Transportation to answer any questions the council may have.
Morning, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Marty Maloney with Peabody Right Away. I am joined today by Liz Tillstrom, who will start the presentation by providing just an overview of the Outer Division project. Liz, are you there?
Yeah, thank you. And good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I apologize, I'm having to join on my phone this morning, so I don't have video available. But we've been to council a few times over the last year talking about this project, and today coming before you for authorization to begin the right-of-way proceedings. And if you could advance to the next slide, please. And just a reminder, this is the Vision Zero corridor project for Outer Southeast Division Street from Southeast 80th to Southeast 174th. The PBOT will be constructing multimodal safety improvements on this corridor. And if you could advance to the next slide, please. And just briefly a bit about our schedule. So we were before you in April authorizing the construction contract with Raymore Construction. They are beginning construction this week on the phase 1 elements. And then pending your authorization today, we will begin processing those right-of-way files and then begin work on the phase 2 elements, which includes those areas that require either permanent or temporary construction easements. That will begin in October. And then we plan to wrap up work in the fall and close out, in the summer, and then close out the construction in the fall. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marty.
Mayor, Commissioners, agenda item 561 gives people authority to compensate affected property owners for the needed property rights and, if necessary, to condemn these property rights associated with the project.
And Marty, sorry to interrupt you. Could we advance the slide? Thank you.
Oh, is it showing?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, sorry. Permanent and temporary rights are needed from 36 individual properties, and they have been identified as by the project. Permanent rights are needed from 21 of those properties for completion of the roadway and signal facilities. Temporary rights will also be needed from all 36 to facilitate construction within those permanent rights, as well as within the existing right-of-way. Owners affected by the needed property rights have been informed of the project and the need for these rights, and we're actually invited to attend this reading as well. That completes the presentation. If council has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them at this time.
I'm not seeing any questions at this particular juncture. Keelan, do we have anybody signed up for public testimony?
No one is signed up.
All right, very good. If there's no questions, that was a good presentation. Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
This is a vital project for the city of Portland and Outer Division. And I am so proud of the work that's been done so far to get us prepared for this. But this is really about saving people's lives and making sure that we are investing in multimodal forms of transportation in high crash areas of the city of Portland. and it's very consistent with our goals around Vision Zero. I am very happy to vote aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Rubio,
I want to thank Commissioner Hardesty, particularly for always lifting up the importance of safety and on the east side. So thank you, and thank you to PBOT for bringing this forward. Looking forward to this project. I vote aye.
Ryan,
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Hardesty and PBOT. It's great to see action to get to the results that we want for Vision Zero. Aye.
Wheeler,
Absolutely aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. 562, please.
vacate unnamed alley between Southwest McDonald Terrace and Southwest Fairmont Boulevard, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. We have before us an ordinance for a street vacation hearing for a small unnamed alley in Southwest Portland. I will just turn this over to Dee Walker from PBOT, who has a presentation on this matter.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. How is everyone?
Great.
Good to see you. I'll just share my screen real quick so I can. Tell me when you can see that.
Not yet. Maybe Keelan can give you a hand.
Something's happening.
It's coming.
There it is.
Got it.
Can you see it now? Okay, so this is a street vacation for an alley between Southwest McDonald Terrace and Southwest Fairmont Boulevard. It's generally located right here. This, I believe, is Madrona Park next to it. And this is a little bit of a closer in view. So we're talking, it's this little alley right here between those two streets. This gives you a better idea of the exact area to be vacated. This little dashed line over here is actually previously vacated. It was part of the alley that was vacated many years ago. So what we're vacating today is the remnant remaining pieces of the alley. This is actually what the alley looks like. So as you can see, right now, the alley is actually this major construction cement concrete wall, and there's actually another concrete wall down here as well. And this deck were built into the alley. So actually the alley is where these walls and deck is. And you can see the right-of-way is actually being held up by a piece of plywood. So what happened is the developer of this property in 2015 went ahead and applied for a couple of permits from the city, 2 permits, one along the frontage of McDonald Terrace, which was granted, and one for the alley, which was denied. So the developer went ahead and built, you can see the hatching of where the alley is, and then the deck over it, and then the 2 concrete walls. So the developer went ahead and built all the improvements across the alley, regardless of being denied the permit. When he sold the property, the homeowner that purchased it came from out of country and paid cash for the house. So they were unaware of these unauthorized encroachments until many years later when they went and put their house on the market and the potential buyer couldn't get lending for it because a lender will not finance a property that has improvements built into the right-of-way. So the property owner pretty much scrambled and said, what can we do? So they applied for street vacation for this area. And as it turned out, PBOT, notifications went out to everyone, and everyone was pretty supportive of the vacation. It's really, really steep slope. So it's something that we really don't want to have to maintain. I'll show you a picture here of This is how sloped it is from looking from Fairmont Boulevard toward McDonald Terrace. So there isn't anything really that we can do with this property. So PBOT was pretty happy to get rid of it, actually. So there were a couple of conditions imposed because things were left as they were. Bridges and structures requires construction to kind of finish the retaining walls to address the stability and take care of the erosion issues. As you can see from this picture, they have their own kind of homemade drainage here that's draining into the right-of-way. And so all of this needed to be taken care of. You can see how the retaining wall was never finished. So the conditions are that they complete all this work and bring it up to code. Development services, pretty much the same thing. The unpermitted work needed to be brought into conformance. Planning and sustainability did hear the item on February 9th and recommended approval with no additional conditions. So once they bring everything up to code and stabilize our right-of-way, then we will go ahead and get the ordinance recorded and be done with the rest of this alley. So that concludes my presentation if there's any questions.
Colleagues, any questions on this item? Commissioner Hardesty.
I'm just curious, the original developer that built in a spot that they were not permitted to build, what are the consequences for behavior like that?
As far as I know, really the only consequence is when they do come in for permits. I believe the fee is double, so they have to pay twice the amount of what the original permit would cost. Other than that, I'm not sure if there are any other consequences.
Yeah, I would be very curious if we tracked folks who built things and then sold them to other unknowing people. And in fact, it is not up to code. Maybe that's a conversation we should have about how do we make sure that that doesn't happen to another family.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that it even happened because inspectors had to go out and inspect the one that was approved. Mm-hmm. And I would have thought that they would have caught the improvements that weren't approved. But it's possible that, the developer waited until they came out and inspected one and then built the other. I don't know. All I know is one was approved, one was denied, and the developer built it anyway. And these are not small encroachments. These are massive concrete walls on a very steep slope. So yes, no one is happy about this situation, but because of the slope, PBOT just doesn't want the asset anymore. But if we did want the asset, it's pretty disheartening that this happened. And actually the seller of the property, they had to put in a large amount, I believe, into a separate escrow account just in case the vacation wasn't approved, because then all of these improvements would have to be removed and be taken away from the right-of-way. So it's a good thing that PBOT isn't interested in keeping this alley. So it's a really good outcome for everyone, but it was unfortunate how it occurred.
Well, thank you. That presentation was really thorough, and I learned something new today. I just couldn't imagine having that concrete thing right at your backyard, knowing that as the soil shifts, there's a potential for that cement wall to come down on your head.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Keelan, do we have any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
All right, this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. 563, please.
Amend intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County Department of Community Justice for an additional $375,000 to hire at-risk youth for outdoor maintenance and landscape services.
Colleagues, this is the second reading. We've heard a presentation and had opportunity for public testimony. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
I want to thank you, Commissioner Mapps, for your openness to answer questions last week. I know I learned a lot about this program and how successful it's been for both the participants as well as the partnership with Water and Multnomah County's Community Justice Department. I'm very happy to vote aye.
Apps,
Colleagues, this program plays an important role in helping maintain the Water Bureau's infrastructure, protecting the environment, and helping the city meet its equity goals. Those are some of the reasons why I'm delighted to vote aye.
Rubio.
I want to thank Commissioner Mapps for bringing this forward, and thanks to our partners of Multnomah County and the Water Bureau. I'm very happy to support this moving forward. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 564, please.
Authorize contract with the Division Midway Alliance for culturally responsive community outreach and translation services for the Mill Park Design Project in amount not to exceed $35,000.
This is a non-emergency ordinance. Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to again appreciate my colleagues also for joining me in approving the Mill Park Development Project earlier this year. And as a reminder, Mill Park is located in East Portland and will serve culturally and linguistically diverse communities. I was able to tour the park a couple months back and with representatives of the Division Midway Alliance. And I know that they will work to ensure that linguistically marginalized communities will have a voice in shaping this community park. Division Midway Alliance has been a huge champion of the development of this park, and their service area squarely aligns with the community of focus in this project. I've been very impressed with their deep passion for the work and their numerous communities that they have authentically engaged with and developed positive relationships. They're trusted by the communities in this neighborhood, and they're extremely qualified to provide these services. So I'll now turn it over to staff for a short presentation.
Hello, Mayor Wheeler and members of the council. My name is Maya Spencer, and I'm a community engagement coordinator with Portland Parks and Recreation. It might look like I'm coming to you from Gateway Discovery Park today, but I'm actually calling in from the Portland building on my third day back, so I'm excited to be here. I believe council's the clerk is gonna pull up the presentation for me, is that right? Okay, great. Excellent. So I'm here today to request council to authorize contracting with Division Midway Alliance for culturally responsive outreach and translation services for the Mill Park Development Project for a total not to exceed amount of $35,000. Next slide, please. The Division Midway Alliance, or DMA, is a place-based nonprofit organization creating social resiliency and economic prosperity for residents and businesses. DMA works with the community surrounding Southeast Division Street from about Southeast 117th to Southeast 148th Avenue. DMA is part of the Neighborhood Prosperity Network, which is a Prosper Portland program designed to support social equity-based community economic development at the neighborhood level. The network is a citywide initiative to foster economic opportunity and vitality throughout Portland neighborhoods, with a focus on low-income populations and communities of color. DMA provides culturally specific outreach and translation services in multiple languages within the Division Midway community. Their staff has established trusted relationships with multiple cultural and language specific communities through their outreach activities that include small business support, Census 2020 outreach, entrepreneurship classes, COVID-19 assistance, outreach, prior outreach with PBOT and TriMet, and their annual Festival of Nations event. Next slide. As you've discussed recently at council meetings when you approved the Mill Park CMGC process and land acquisition, PBNR is taking another step towards more equitable park access for East Portland residents by developing Mill Park. The park is located within the block bounded by Southeast 117th Avenue to the west, Southeast 122nd Avenue to the east, Southeast Mill Court to the north, and Southeast Lincoln Street on the south in the Mill Park neighborhood in the David Douglas School District. The new Mill Park will serve a culturally diverse community rich with ethnic and language diversity. For example, at the adjacent elementary school, over 25 languages are spoken, and 44% of the student body are enrolled as English as a second language learners. Next slide. The Mill Park Design Project will require community outreach that is culturally appropriate and conducted in multiple languages to successfully reach and engage the diverse communities that will use the future Mill Park. The primary engagement work will happen this summer through next winter as we move through the design phase for the new Mill Park. Our community engagement plan includes 5 project advisory committee meetings that are made up of a 16-person committee representing neighbors, the school, religious communities, and cultural communities. We also will host 3 community gathering events with the broader community. And by collaborating with DMA, we will be able to reach communities who speak a total of 7 languages, including English. And you can see the languages listed there on the slide that we'll be doing outreach to. Next slide, please. DMA is the ideal organization to enhance community outreach for the Mill Park Design Project. Their partnership will create a process that is equitable and inclusive by reducing barriers to engagement and ensuring the ultimate park design reflects the community's needs. Outreach staff who are trusted by the community and who can connect with community members who speak multiple languages and come from diverse communities will be critical for the success of this project. PPNR is dedicated to ensuring the process developed Mill Park is centered in equity and inclusion. Unfortunately, in trying to figure out how to contract with DMA, we found that nonprofits do not qualify to register as a state of Oregon COVID certified firm, also known as DMWSB, so diverse, minority, women-owned and emerging small businesses. Although DMA is led by people of color and primarily works with multiple cultural and language-specific communities throughout Portland, a COVID direct contract is not viable. However, DMA's location, skill set, and established community relationships makes them extremely well positioned to provide these services in a way that PPNR or other organizations cannot perform. And so therefore, we're seeking council's approval today to contract with DMA in a sole source procurement. Next slide. So in conclusion, we request council's approval of this ordinance, which will allow PPNR to contract with DMA to perform this important outreach for the Mill Park Design Project. Thank you, and now I will be happy to take any questions.
All right, very good. Colleagues, any questions? Keelan, do we have anybody signed up for public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
All right, very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you.
Next item, please, 565.
Temporarily modify and leave portions of city code titles, original art murals, signs, and related regulations, and planning and zoning to assist businesses, organizations, and entrepreneurs to adjust and continue operations during and through the COVID-19 pandemic.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, we're back with this lovely item, second reading, ... So colleagues, over the last month, we've had a lot of dialogue about this ordinance. It has evolved, and I think we've landed in a sweet spot with a better policy. 2 weeks ago, Commissioners Mapps and Rubio collaborated on an amendment that gives RAC and others sufficient time to assist with the preservation and relocation of murals painted on boarded up windows. And over the last couple of weeks, Commissioner Hardesty and I have been in dialogue working with Director Esau and her team, and we've crafted an amendment that focuses the temporary waiver on non-conforming upgrades while still supporting our local small and mid-sized businesses. We also have a technical amendment suggested by our city attorneys, and we like to introduce an emergency clause. So in total, we'll have 3 amendments and then the final vote. With that, I'd like to welcome back Matt Wickstrom and Director Rebecca Esau to present the amendments and answer any additional questions. I turn it over to Matt or Director Esau. Yeah.
Matt's not on mute and he's talking, but we can't hear him.
Yeah, right now, Matt, we can't hear you. Director Esau, how's your technology going?
It's going fine. Matt, is your mic working or can you take yourself off mute? He's got the presentation.
Matt, you will never forget this ordinance.
And he wasn't on me. Oh, there we go.
Yay.
Matt,
where
is your,
Matt is.
Matt, we can't hear you.
Director Esau, can I
Yes.
ask you to just use your
Yeah,
wisdom to guide
I
us
was
through
just
this?
giving him a minute in case he was able to get there. Okay, so can we advance to the next slide? All right, as Commissioner Ryan covered, we've got 2 amendments plus an emergency clause today. We've discussed this at multiple sessions with you, and we've got some input from the city attorney regarding language around the murals on boarded up windows, and we are adding that emergency clause so we can get this ordinance into effect as soon as possible. Next slide, please. All right, what we've done in the meantime is looked at 2019 permit data related to the non-conforming upgrade threshold. And we narrowed the scope of what we were looking at to retail sales and service uses as defined in the zoning code. And then we pulled commercial tenant improvement permits that had a business or mercantile subtype. And there were a total of 467 permits fitting that description in 2019. And we looked at different thresholds. The current threshold in the zoning code is $306,000, and $306,300 or less are exempt from doing non-conforming upgrades. We looked at if we increased the threshold to $500,000, that added another 18 permits. So not a lot of gain there. And then we looked at the $1 million threshold, and you get an additional 40 projects that way, and actually 98% of all of those permits. So in talking with Commissioner Ryan and with Commissioner Hardesty, that was the direction we wanted to go, because we wanted to cast as wide a net as possible for those projects in those uses and that description type to provide the most benefit. Also acknowledging materials costs have gone up and remained high throughout. So cost for each of these projects is probably higher than it was 2 years ago. Next slide, please. So for the non-conforming upgrades, the specific types of projects that we're talking about that would get this waiver, temporary waiver to non-conforming upgrades, we're including all daycare uses. So that's preschools, daycares, other uses similar to that, as well as elder care is also in that category. The next one is affordable housing. We've also included community service uses, which includes shelters, substance use treatment centers, et cetera. And then, as we just described, the retail sales and service uses with that dollar valuation threshold of 1 million or lower. Next slide. So the city attorney has made a recommendation as to how we word this this language in the ordinance regarding boarded up windows. And the deadline for that, it's all stated there. And I think we've covered that in a previous presentation. So next slide. And then the emergency clause language that we've put together so that this can go into effect as soon as possible. Next slide. I think that's it. If Matt, are you able to add anything to this at this point, or are you still, is your mic not working? Give him an opportunity. Okay. That concludes the presentation. Are there any questions or comments at this point?
I'm not seeing any. Commissioner Ryan, you had some amendments.
Yes, I do. Let me see if I have them all in front of me. There's a motion to amend Directive B as follows. So I just go ahead and, oh, it's up there, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good, isn't it? Am I supposed to read all of this, Mayor?
I'll defer to legal counsel. It's on the record visually. Does it need to be read into the record?
No, he's fine if you just, I can actually read a smaller version. So there's 3 amendments. The first one is to amend Directive J to read, notwithstanding the time limitation in Directive I, waive Portland City Code 33.130.230 A3 and B3, 33.415.340 and 33.510.220B to allow murals and the materials on which they are affixed to remain in place without a permit or adjustment until December 31st, 2021.
Okay, so
I moved that, yeah.
Okay, so that is Ryan, number 1, moved by Commissioner Ryan, seconded by Commissioner Hardesty. Was that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that is Ryan Amendment 1.
Okay, so we vote on that now, or do we?
Why don't you
do all the amendments?
Yeah, just put them all on the table, because then I'm going to ask if we have public testimony on any of these.
Ken, you're on a roll. Will you continue, please?
That was the one we just did. What's up on the screen? The second amendment, which I was given, is to B, which says waive PCC 33.258.070 D1 and PCC 33.258.070.
Excuse me, Mayor, point of order. Could we have the slide match what Ken's talking about, just so that public record?
I believe, isn't this the correct slide, the one we're looking at?
That's the one we just did.
Okay, can we change the slide so it matches, please? I think that's the one we were just looking at. Is there a different one? Okay, is this like an eye test? That's the same one.
Back again to the beginning.
Wait, no, go back one. Wait, no, go back 2. Go back 2. There, is this it? This is it. Can you confirm this is the correct one?
That looks to be the correct amendment. Yeah.
Great. I passed the eye test. Okay. And this, go ahead and read this one then.
Okay. The amendment is to waive PCC 33.258.070 D1 and PCC 33.258.070 D2 through March 31st, 2023 for the following projects. A, projects including a community service use as defined in 33.920.420. B, projects including a daycare use as defined in 33.920.430. And C, development with affordable housing units when at least 50% of the total number of proposed dwelling units on the site are affordable to those earning no more than 60% of the area median income or an affordability level established by Title 30. And D, retail projects including one or more sales and service uses as defined in 33.920.250 if the project valuation is $1 million or less. Permits submitted after March 31st, 2023 will be subject to non-conforming upgrade requirements.
Very good. And Commissioner Ryan moves this. Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
And this will be Ryan Amendment number 2. And there's a third one here.
That's to add the emergency clause, which reads, the council declares an emergency exists because businesses need urgent relief from the costs, time, and regulation involved with land use review and permit review timelines and certain city code allowances through the economic crisis associated with the COVID-19 emergency, while the state of emergency declared by Mayor Ted Wheeler on March 12, 2020 is in effect, as well as dates forecasted concerning when the economy returns to pre-COVID-19 levels and necessary timelines for businesses to transition to pre-COVID-19 operations. Therefore, this ordinance shall be immediately effective upon its passage by council.
All right, so we have amendment 1, we have amendment 2. This is the emergency clause moved by Commissioner Ryan. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Hardesty. Are there any other amendments anybody?
No, 3 amendments and then the vote. Yeah.
That's it? Okay. Is there any public testimony, Keelan?
No one is on the call.
Is there any other discussion on these items? With that, we will vote on the amendments in sequence. We'll start with Commissioner Ryan, amendment number 1. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye. Can we put the screen down, please?
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment's adopted. Ryan, amendment number 2, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, to the emergency clause. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment's adopted. The main motion is amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
I want to take a moment to thank Commissioner Ryan and Director Esar. Clearly, where we are today is a different place than when we started this conversation at council. And I am really grateful for the time that Director Esar spent with me and my staff, and Commissioner Ryan for your openness to continue the conversation and dialogue. It is my belief that this is a solid policy, and it's a solid policy because we listen to each other and we adapted where we thought it made sense. So I am very, very pleased to be able to vote aye today. I would not have been a couple of weeks ago, but this goes to show what teamwork will do. I'm happy to vote aye.
Maps.
I'd like to thank Commissioner Ryan for his leadership in bringing this item forward. Also, thanks to all the BDS staff who put together a really innovative package of proposals that'll help Portland get back to the business of opening up and recovering from the COVID crisis. For these reasons, I'm happy to vote aye.
Rubio.
I also want to thank Commissioner Ryan and BDS Director Esau, Mac Wickstrom, and the team for bringing forward this ordinance, and also my colleagues, Commissioner Hardesty and Commissioner Maps, for working together to get this policy right, especially regarding these 2 amendments. And I also want to thank my colleagues for supporting my amendment to extend the timeline for murals to remain in place. RAC's already engaging in this work, and we know it takes time to do respectfully. So thank you for enabling this to continue. I'm also grateful to Commissioner Ryan and proud to see how bureaus like BDS are stepping up to help our businesses in this time. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. This was quite a journey, and it was actually a good one. I really appreciate Director Esau and Matt Wickstrom for your openness. I really do think we landed with better policy because of this process. And this pandemic has really taken a tremendous toll on our local businesses. And this ordinance provides several ways the city can help our small and mid-sized businesses get back on their feet and thrive as a pandemic ends, or at least evolves, and our economy begins to grow again. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I want to express my thanks to Commissioner Ryan and express my thanks to other commissioners who worked with Commissioner Ryan on what I think are some very thoughtful and pragmatic amendments. This is good collaboration. I appreciate it. I want to thank the Bureau for their hard work on this. I know that what may seem pretty self-evident on its face is actually extremely complicated. Thank you, Director Esau, and your whole team for doing a great job of working through this and working with members of the City Council to make this a thoughtful package. I'm very happy to support this effort. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Let's see, 566, please.
Approve application under the multiple unit limited tax exemption program under the inclusionary housing program for Madera Morrison Apartments located at 1130 Southeast Morrison Street.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes. Sorry, my papers got disheveled. Give me one moment.
Like Matthew is here to ready to step in.
Yeah, just pretend I'm having a technology moment. Colleagues, today we have one of those wonderful multi-applications for the Madera Morrison Apartments. This project was elected to use the bedroom reconfiguration action. And we have Matthew Scheibold and Casey Graves from the Housing Bureau here to present the specifics. I will turn it over to you, Matthew, and look forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner, mayors and members of council. For the record, Matthew Schaubold with the Portland Housing Bureau. As usual, just an update on the inclusionary housing pipeline before we go to the project specifics. We using still the data from April, so our Q1 data of this year, we're finalizing our Q2 data right now. We have almost 1,200 inclusionary housing units that are either open, in construction, or far enough along in the permit pipeline that we're confident that they'll move to construction. The majority of those units are at 60% of the median income and below, and we are seeing larger bedroom counts than what is otherwise produced in the private housing market. This particular project is at 1130 Southeast Morrison Street, the Morrison Apartments. It is a 247 unit building. They are using the bedroom reconfiguration option. We are also very pleased to see that they are doing this at the 60% of the median income level, which is where there's a higher need, and that the 3-bedroom units that they're providing are larger units, which will be suitable for families in an area of the city that does have a strong need for family size housing that is affordable to the average household and average worker. So in total, we'll get 10 3-bedroom units and 1 studio unit. They will rent significantly below market, particularly for the 3 bedrooms, and the Housing Bureau is recommending this approval. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor, if I may.
Now I'm having the problem. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. I had a question about the tax exemption for all the common area and for all the parking. That is not something I've seen in multi-applications in the past. Could you tell me why we are exempting all common areas when we're getting so few units?
We may not have been as explicit in the language, but it does, when a building does get the full property tax exemption. So for buildings in the central city that are zoned or building at 5:1 FAR or greater, they're eligible for the full property tax exemption under the program. And the property tax exemption is on all residential and then residential related parts of the building. And so when the full property tax exemption comes through, it is for the residential square footage in the units themselves, as well as the hallways and common areas, and then the parking that is dedicated to the people who live in the building.
To all the people in the building.
Correct. In the central city, the inclusionary housing program provides the full tax exemption on all of the residential square footage in the building.
And in our study, are we going to study whether that makes any sense at all when we're talking about climate mitigation, that we would be actually subsidizing people parking vehicles in new buildings? Is that one of the questions in a study that we're going to answer? Because I think that's a really poor policy in a place that has the best transportation in the city of Portland. That just seems outrageous to me.
It's not something we've specifically thought about, but I think we can certainly, in the feasibility analysis, we can certainly look at, we will have what the value of the property tax exemption is on various parts of the building. So we can certainly share that with City Council and then take City Council's direction on whether or not they want to continue to apply the property tax exemption to all the residential and residential related, or tailor it more narrowly to only the residential space or some other potential policy option.
Yeah, I hope we do that before you bring another proposal like this in front of us, because this one is really hard to support with that embedded in it. And I do understand how desperately we need 3-bedroom units at a decent size, square footage, but that troubles me that is just an automatic that happens without any conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with what Commissioner Hardesty, that dialogue was exactly the type of conversation we need that helps us make sure that when we do the study that we're covering all of our concerns. Again, this was inspired policy, and like any policy, once it's implemented, you'd start to see what's working well and what isn't. And so that's why we have the policy. That's why we're doing the study. So thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
All right, very good. Any further questions at this time? If not, is there any public testimony, Keelan?
No one signed up.
All right, this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. And with that, colleagues, we are adjourned until 2 p.m.
Recording stopped.